Welcome to the Transition Drill Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Pantiani. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. So let's get into this. Can you explain the fighter rankings? So doing a little stalking of you. If you look at like SureDog, you're down around, I want to say 7th or 8th ranked. But on, and I've already forgotten the name of the website, you're ranked 2nd. How does...
Tapology, probably. So some websites will, like, if you've been inactive for over a year, you can't be ranked anymore. Other websites, they just count, like, wins and losses differently because it depends on, well, who'd you lose to, or any of your wins by knockout or submission. So every website kind of ranks fighters differently. You know, last year I was definitely ranked, I think, top 5 in the world last year. Now, like, haven't had a fight. I just hit my year mark. Or is it October? Yeah, like last month was like my year anniversary of my last fight. So I'm not even sure, like, if a lot of websites are even ranking me right now.
How long do you, if you go, how long without a fight do you basically lose ranking?
It depends on the website, but a lot of them, like, if you don't fight for at least a year, they won't rank you anymore. Like, you have to stay active.
Now, you're in the Atomweight?
Atomweight division.
UFC doesn't go that low yet, correct?
UFC and Bellator, the two biggest organizations in this country, they have every weight class but mine, so it sucks.
I did see an article one time where UFC was considering it. It might have even been earlier this year, but they've
been saying that for years, that they're going to start the Atomweight division, and they still haven't. So it's been a couple years they've been having those rumors and talks, and now I'm just kind of like, I'll believe it when I see it. So,
what do you think the reason for keeping it out or not adopting it?
Probably, it honestly doesn't make sense because on paper, like, they have women's 145, and there's barely any females to fill that division. You know, most females aren't that big. When my weight class, there's so many women, not only in the United States, but across the world, in Asia and, like, Brazil and everywhere. There's so many atomweights, so there's more depth to the weight class, but I think they don't have it just because everyone wants to see the big knockouts. So, you know, obviously 45ers, you know, it's more power. They're bigger females. But honestly, the atomweights, like, we have a ton of finishes in the atomweight division. Females getting knocked out, TKO'd, submitted. So, yeah, I mean, I don't get it. Because there's nothing against the 45ers, but there's just not that many of them. Sorry.
I was going to say, would the atomweight class be much bigger?
Oh, yeah. There'd be way more females than 145.
And now you still are currently a pro fighter for Invicta?
Yes.
That's all females.
Yeah. So Invicta is the highest I can go in my weight class in this country. So I'm with Invicta. I'm I got a title fight. I had 2 title fights last year. That's as high as I can go. I didn't win my title fight, so that's why I was like, well, I don't know what's next for me because I can't go to UFC. I can't go to Bellator. I've fought the best in the world in my weight class in this country. Fought for a world title. It's like, I don't know, for me, I'm 34. I don't know what's next for me.
Do you have in your mind, do you have an expiration date for when you're going to have to give it up?
No, I mean, I think I'm just holding on the hope the UFC is going to start my weight class. In the meantime, like, since my last fight, it was a little over a year ago, I've really have come into my new groove of helping police officers train and defensive tactics and jiu-jitsu. So that's kind of like my new passion, because before, like, I was taking fights back to back to back. So, like, I didn't have time for anything else besides work and train. And now, like, I train when it's convenient for me. When I have time, I train. If I'm busy helping a police officer train or, hanging out with my family, I do that. I did actually just accept a pro boxing fight that I'm doing in November. That's not something I was looking for, though. Kind of just fell in my lap, and it's actually for a police charity that I'm really passionate about, and that's a big reason why I accepted the fight.
And you're off topic, and I want to eventually get there, but you're affiliated with Adopt A Cop, correct?
I am not. So I'm not affiliated with them in the sense where they sponsor police officers to train for free. I don't do that. I mean, what Adopt A Cop does is they train for police officers gym membership until they reach the rank of blue belt. So it's officers that have like no jiu-jitsu experience. Okay. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 14 years. I'm already I'm a purple belt. So that's not even something that I could do. I just help them out by like advertising, what they're about.
But you just fought in the Cops versus Stonerz, and wasn't that like sponsored by Adopt A Cop?
Yeah. So that was they just put on an event in Vegas called a Cops versus Stonerz Jiu-Jitsu event. So it wasn't like MMA fighting like what I do. It's just jiu-jitsu. And it was to raise money for the nonprofit Adopt A Cop. And
you went up against your competitor. You gave up a decent amount of weight, if I remember. How much total weight discrepancy? Was there an actual weigh-in?
Yeah, we weighed in. And it was weird because like they didn't, they asked me like 2 months out, will you do this event? And I was like, sure. Like I would love to support you guys. It's a great cause. And then they kept telling me they couldn't find me an opponent. So I pretty much stopped training for it because I was like, well, they can't find me an opponent. So like I stopped dieting and I was like, whatever, like, and I kind of just out of sight, out of mind. And then like a week out, they were like, oh, we found you an opponent. And I was like, oh,
gee, thanks.
I didn't even know you guys were still looking. Like I thought I wasn't even on the card anymore. So I was like, well, what weight? I was like, what's the weight class? I haven't been dieting at all. And they're like, oh, like they didn't know. They're like, we don't even know what your opponent weighs. And I was like, okay. So I was like, should I diet? And it was like kind of just a lot of miscommunication. Nothing, it's not their fault. I think it was
just a hard event to put together and get everybody lined up to do it.
And it was, I'm just grateful they found me an opponent. So I was just like, okay. So like, I was talking to my fiance. I was like, should I like start dieting? I'm a week out. Like, I don't know what to do. And then she was like, they didn't tell you a weight class. And now I'm glad I didn't cut any weight because I get there and I was like, oh, this girl's a lot bigger. I'm glad I didn't diet.
But you still won.
Yeah.
So let's take it back then. How did you come into the fight game? When did you start training martial arts?
I started training my sophomore year at college.
Okay.
So,
just BJJ or specifically MMA?
I started training everything: MMA, Muay Thai, boxing, jiu-jitsu. I had a soccer scholarship, and I don't know. I played soccer my whole life, and I just kind of, I think, lost the passion for it. And I've always wanted to fight. It's something I was passionate about even in high school, but my parents wouldn't let me. So once I was in college, I was just like, well, they can't stop me anymore. I'm going to do what I want.
Where'd you grow up?
St. Louis, Missouri.
And what brought you to California?
My parents and sister moved to LA several years ago. And then I met my fiance in St. Louis, and we were together for a couple of years. And she grew up in San Diego. So I was like, well, my family's in LA, your family's in San Diego. Like, we got engaged, and we're like, we might as well move to California to be closer to our parents. They're getting older, and we want to be able to take care of them.
What brought your family to California from Missouri?
It's kind of a weird story, but so I have a younger sister, and she had a dream of being an actress and like a model.
Not a fighter.
No, we're complete opposites. As you can tell, I'm fighting, and she's trying to act and model. She's like very girly, like only wears pink. So when she was in high school, she moved to LA to pursue that dream. And my mom was like, well, you're too young to live alone in LA. So she moved with my sister. And then they loved it in LA. They're like,
just stayed.
Yeah, they're like, we don't want to go back to Missouri. And then my dad, he's still married to my mom. So he moved out there to be with his wife. And then I was just in St. Louis all alone. I was like, oh, they left me.
So it would, for the average person, coming from no martial arts background to all of a sudden, you said you'd wanted to, but your parents wouldn't let you. And then just in college, you're like, screw it, I'm going for it.
Yeah.
Did you find the transition hard?
No. I was always an athlete. Like I said, I played soccer. I did do like Taekwondo growing up, but honestly, Taekwondo there's no correlation. So It's not like my Taekwondo experience like helped me with MMA. It didn't.
Yeah, but Taekwondo's in the Olympics.
But it's different because it's like point fighting and it's like board breaking and forms. When like MMA and Jiu Jitsu, it's like you're really fighting.
No, I
like,
get it.
So it's just different. But yeah, I was always an athlete. So, I mean, obviously, like, my first couple years, like, super green. I didn't know what I was doing, but I just knew I loved it and I just wanted to keep getting better.
Now, where'd the desire to be a cop come from?
I don't know. Like, no one in my family is in law enforcement. So like, you hear a lot of people like, oh, my dad or my mom or my uncle is a cop. And I don't know. Like I was in college and I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And I had a professor that was a chief of Maryland Heights Police Department. And I just loved him. I thought he was like he's amazing. I still like stay in contact with him. And he offered me an internship at his police department. And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And for an entire summer, Monday through Friday, I'd come up to Maryland Heights Police Department. I'd do ride-alongs. They'd have me do like stuff around the station, like paperwork stuff. And I was just like, wow, this is cool. And I don't know. That's kind of where my interest came.
So you went to college, though, on a scholarship for soccer.
Yeah.
What were you studying at that point in time?
Criminal justice.
So you kind of had an inclination towards it.
Yeah. Not like I wanted to I was interested in law enforcement, but I was more interested in like the federal side. And I never really thought about being a cop until I did that internship.
Did you ever give federal side a try once you got into law enforcement?
No. I mean, I was a task force officer for the FBI and DEA. This was back in St. Louis, but that's like the closest I've come.
So how many years were you a cop in St. Louis?
8.
And then coming out to California, was it an easy transition or did you have to go back to the academy?
So what I did, I applied to several departments in San Diego area, and every department was like, no, you have to go back to the academy. And I just did not want to. Like, I did not want to go through that again and get tased and sprayed, OC sprayed. And then I finally found one police department that said, as long as you take the California post exam and pass, we won't force you to go back. So that's what happened.
Now, were you already taking professional fights while you were back in Missouri?
Oh, yeah. I turned pro in I think 2011, and I didn't move out here till 2018.
Either one of your agencies ever have an issue with you fighting professionally?
My agency in St. Louis did. They worried that I was going to get seriously injured and it was, going to affect me being a cop, which I totally get because there was, I think my second year on, I had a pro fight for Invicta. I think it was like my third pro fight. And the first minute of the fight, I lost my vision. I didn't know what happened. I just couldn't see. I got hit with a jab and then lights went out.
Oh, wow.
I continued to try to fight through it and I couldn't see anything. And eventually I got TKO'd.
Both eyes or one eye?
I couldn't see out of either eye. It was extremely blurry. Like if I was looking at someone, I saw like 4 or 5 of them. Like it was really weird. And then I go back to the locker room, because I remember during the fight, I was like, okay, I just got dazed, and it will go away. And it never went away. I just couldn't see. So I got TKO'd and then I went in the locker room and, after fights, they always have a doctor check you out. I told the doctor, I can't see. It was even 30 minutes after the fight. My vision hadn't come back. So I went to the emergency room that night, and this was in Kansas City. And I got the x-rays done, or a scan, and they said I had 3 broken orbital bones, and I had something else. I don't know. I had 3 broken orbital bones, and something else happened to my eye, and that's why I lost my vision. They said the brain, the way it works is it was just my right eye, but if one eye goes out, they're both go out.
Connected,
yeah,
so to speak.
because they're connected to the brain. So that's why I couldn't see out of either eye. So the doctor was like, let's wait a week and see if your vision comes back. Waited a week, and I just laid in bed, scared, what's happening? I couldn't see. After a week, my vision never came back or got better, so I had to get surgery.
Now, when you're saying your vision didn't come back, so you open your eyes, what are you seeing? Is it just all blur? Is it darkness?
It was all blur, really, I couldn't like I just laid in bed and like pretty much I had to have my dad like bring me food to my bed. Like I couldn't walk around the house.
And nothing, like if you put your hand in front of your face, other than knowing that your hand was there, you couldn't see it.
No.
I'm assuming now, obviously your vision came back.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I think my last police department, from that incident, that's what them not wanting me to fight. I think it stemmed from that because I had to get surgery. And after surgery, like the vision doesn't come back right away. It's like a slow process. So it took like about a month for it to come back to normal. And I actually have a metal plate under my right eye now from that surgery.
Oh, wow.
So I always joke like I'm like the Terminator. But yeah, so then I had to like requalify with my gun and like go through this whole process to get back to duty. So like after that, I think, you know, and I get it. They're like, that could happen again.
That's not what we're paying you for.
Yeah,
we're paying you to be able to hit the road.
Exactly. So I think that's what that stemmed from, was that incident.
Now, from a fighting aspect, is that now a weak spot on your face?
No, actually, the doctor said that will never happen again to my right eye.
Oh.
If I get a broken orbital bone, it will be my left eye now.
And so after that fight, did you take any more pro fights while you were still in Missouri?
Oh, yeah, several.
Did you have to do it secretly or?
No, they like every time I had a fight, I had to like tell my supervisors because we had to fill out this form because like I'm getting paid. So like I had to fill out a special form.
Like secondary employment?
Yeah, secondary employment. So they always knew. I mean, they can't say I can't. I'm not doing anything illegal. So it's not like they're like, no, you can't do that. They were just concerned and probably like not the most supportive, but like it came from a good place.
But ultimately, at the end of the day, what they're concerned about is the money that they've invested in you to be able to go work as a police officer, and you're doing activities that could potentially impact that. Now, being a pro fighter with Invicta or whatever, is that something that you seek out, or do they come to you and say, we want to hire you as a pro fighter?
They have to come to you, and they give you a contract.
Does it require you to have a manager or?
You should, yeah. Without a manager, you're probably not going to get signed by them.
So did you already have that in place when they came looking for you? Or what I'm trying to get at is if somebody's a cop right now and they're thinking about, hey, I want to go the pro fight game, what step would be the first thing that they should do? Obviously, other than learning how to fight.
Yeah, I mean, if any officer trains and wants to go professionally, I mean, you need a manager. I mean, it'd be maybe your first 1 or 2 fights, you'd be good without one. But after that, like, because managers get you sponsors as well, and they get you fight opportunities. Like, without a manager, like, no promotion's really going to want to talk to you.
And then balancing the demands of being a pro fighter while trying to still be a cop, in the sense of, do they put demands on you of, hey, you have to fight at this day, regardless if you've got to work or anything?
Yeah.
Or do you get to kind of schedule when your fights are going to be?
No, they give me the day.
So I would imagine that it's got to be it's got to be a difficult balancing act to maintain a law enforcement job and try to get to the ranks of being a pro fighter.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the easiest. I mean, it's manageable, but yeah, I mean, there's obstacles you're going to face that you have to work through for sure.
And then out here in California, did you have any issues, or did they have any problems with you being a fighter?
No, actually, so when I came out here, my current police department, they loved it. And I was shocked because I came from my last department that was like, we don't want you to fight, like, because of X, Y, and Z. And I came out here and they're like, when's your next fight? And I'm like, oh shit, like, why? And they're like, oh, we want to sponsor you. And I was like, what? You're going to, like, so like my police department has sponsored me in my, last 3 MMA fights, my current police department. So
sponsored you in the sense of like
they pay me, like they pay me extra money to like wear the logo on like my shorts.
And what about working? And are they good about giving you the necessary time to train and work your schedule around it? Or do they still kind of say, hey, here's your schedule, you just got to make it work?
No, I mean, even so when you get a fight, usually you get like 8 to 10 weeks notice. So even at my last police department, like that's enough notice usually to get the time off you need for fight week and fight night. So I don't think I've ever had an issue getting the week of the fight, getting that week off.
What's it like trying to balance the demands of a shift work and going to court and all that with when you're, because I would imagine as you're getting ready for a fight, the training and intensity has to ramp up like crazy.
Oh yeah. It's difficult. That's probably the hardest part, honestly, if you're in law enforcement, because as a professional fighter, a majority of people that are pro fighters, that's all they do is train. Like that's their career. That's what they're getting paid for. So they have 3 training sessions a day. They get the nap in between training sessions, and they get all, enough sleep. Well, if you have a career as well as being a pro fighter, like you don't get that luxury. So that's why like it's really rare to come across pro fighters like myself and maybe like a couple others that have a full-time career, especially one like in law enforcement where it's like crazy hours. So yeah, like I mean, there's definitely been times where, I talked to my fiance about how much better would I have done in my pro career if I wasn't a cop. If I could just have 100% just train full time like most pro fighters. I would have gotten a lot more training in, a lot more better sleep. Would have been more prepared for fights, but this is what I chose. I love being a cop and I love being a pro fighter, and I've always said like, I was happiest with both in my life. If I would have cut one out, whether it's law enforcement or being a fighter, like I, wouldn't have felt like whole inside.
Did it ever come to a point like with your injuries and stuff where it's something to say, ooh, you know what, I really like the pro fight game, but maybe this isn't what I really, want to do?
No, I mean, man, I've been fighting for like 14, 15 years, and not only until recently have I been like, man, like, my body's not feeling great. And I think it has nothing to do with the sport or the job. That's just my age. Like I'm getting older. I started in college. I'm 34 now. So it's just a lot of fights over the years and just training. And it's even in training, like you're getting beat on, like you're getting beat up, you're getting hurt. So it's just the accumulation. It's like, man. And then, seeing that like the UFC doesn't have my weight class, you just kind of get to a point where it's like, I don't know, like how much left I got in me.
So now you've transitioned into doing more law enforcement related training.
Yeah.
Is that something that you started on your own, or was it a group of officers that started it?
I started it on my own. I mean, there's officers that what I'm trying to do, there's officers across the U.S. that are doing it, but I think I'm really the only one in San Diego area that's like pushing for it.
And you offer that training for free to law enforcement.
Yes.
They just obviously have to come to you and where you train.
Mm-hmm.
How often do you offer that training?
Once a week right now.
And for somebody coming in to train with you, are you doing single sport specific, or are you doing what or your experience with the fight game and applying it to law enforcement?
That's a good question. So, I've been a cop for a long time, like almost 11 years. I've been training MMA and Jiu Jitsu for 14 years. So I'm combining MMA and Jiu Jitsu and the necessary techniques that are needed in the law enforcement community that we're not training officers. And these techniques are going to help keep them and the people that they're trying to arrest safe. Control holds, just different situations, different techniques. So, a lot of officers are like, I see officers doing what I'm doing across the country, and they're like, oh, only jiu-jitsu, only jiu-jitsu. I don't really have that mentality. I think because I come from like an MMA background. So like I am showing like MMA things too, like striking, elbows, stuff like that.
So you're incorporating everything that you've learned into a method that works for in a law enforcement environment.
Yes.
And for the officers coming to training, are you getting mostly men, mostly women? Are you tailoring it to one or the other?
So when I started my program, just because I know how cops are, I was like, okay, I want to have a male instructor with me, because I know like if it's only me, I'm probably only going to get women in the class. It's just the reality. And I get it. Like men are going to be like, this girl's like 5'2", like what is she going to help me with? not all men, but like a lot of them.
Correct.
So a good friend of mine, Mike, he's also a local cop here. He's got a lot of wrestling experience. We trained together at my MMA and Jiu Jitsu gym, so I've been friends with him since I moved out here. And he was 100% on board when I told him about it. And also this retired sergeant that he worked at the academy, recently retired. So I asked these two, hey, do you want to, this is what I'm starting. I would like some male instructors with me. Do you guys want in? And they were like, yeah, like we'd love to help. So us three kind of, we teach together. It's my program, but they're like I tell the officers that come in, like, I don't know everything. I don't have the answers to everything. And especially a lot of the things I do show in my classes, I specifically say like, hey, this will be great for the men. Females, don't drill this. I'm going to give you something different because it's not going to work for a female officer.
Just because of size and strength differences?
Exactly. So, you know, sometimes, and I say like, I don't know everything, and it's good to have perspectives from another instructor that's male, that's a different size. So a lot of times, like, I let the other two male instructors like, hey, like, I want you to teach this. I don't want to, you know, you're going to give better insight to these officers than I can for this position or against this type of suspect. So I think we all three, me and the two male instructors, like, we balance each other out. And the classes have been going really well. I get about half women, half men every class. So it's good.
And how long have you been doing it?
When did we start? It started a few months ago.
So it's
still new.
Real new.
Mm-hmm.
But you're getting good response across the board?
Yeah. I mean, some classes, man, like there was a couple of classes, there was like 18 cops showing up and I mean, I was expecting, like, when I first started, like, oh, I'll get, like, you know, 5, like 6, but it's like word is spread, it's growing, officers are coming back. So, I mean, that shows me, because at first I was like, if they don't like it, they're not going to come back, but they're coming back, the same officers. There's one female officer that was like, you know, I want to personally thank you and what you've done for me. She's like, I've always known, like, she's smaller than me. She's probably like 5 feet tall and like 100 pounds. She's like, I've always wanted to get better at this aspect of law enforcement, like my DTAC, my jiu-jitsu. She's like, I've tried in the past, and every time I've gone to like DTAC training or just a jiu-jitsu gym, I always feel really uncomfortable and feel like the instructors make me feel like, you know, I'm just not good enough or I'm not athletic enough. She's like, you're the first person I've gone to where I'm in a positive environment. I'm learning, I'm having fun, and I'm enjoying, like, you know, the process of the classes and everything. So that made me feel good. I was like, okay, I'm doing something right. Like,
well, that's a key thing too, because especially for cops, because myself included, you know, I just started rolling recently. You know, I mean, literally 6 months into it. And one of the concerns even that I had was I don't want to walk into a room full of 20-year-olds who just want to kill each other every single class. And I got very fortunate in finding the studio that I train at. It's mostly cops and military, all of us older, you know, so we all kind of like, hey, you want to start on the ground? Let's just start on the ground. But it's that environment where you feel comfortable. Is everybody you're training with all law enforcement, or will you let non-law enforcement into those classes?
I have invited military personnel, and I've had a couple come in, but for the most part, no. Like, yeah, I mean, I want them to feel safe and like with what we talk about and like scenarios. And I know personally, like, if there's civilians in there, like, I wouldn't feel comfortable. Not that we're saying anything bad, but you know, it's the reality of the job, like,
right.
Certain situations and like what you would have to do, like if someone grabbed your gun and stuff like that. And it's like, so no, I have not had any civilians in my class. Have
you thought about taking it in that route of just maybe self-defense for women?
I'd be open to it. I mean, for me, I just want to help people stay safe. Right. I mean, obviously right now, like, I'm a cop, so I'm focusing on cops, but like whether it's women in general or just CCW holders that are just, you know, not law enforcement, like, I just want people to know how to defend themselves and their families and be safe from the evil in the world.
Because I could definitely see this is something that, I mean, whether or not you, I don't know if this is your plan, but I could definitely see this growing and taking up a lot more of your time.
Honestly, like so this is my passion, is teaching. Like I have a passion for law enforcement and I have a passion for martial arts. So combining my two passions to help people stay safe, that's what makes me the happiest. I've talked to my fiance about like, man, like I would love to just be able to teach full time. Especially like, I've been a cop for a while now, like, the normal, like, okay, you're starting to get burnt out. Like, I would love to teach full time, and I've kind of like looked in the avenues of that. We'll see. California is expensive, and I do have to make money to live here. So
right.
We'll see.
Now, what are you seeing? So I've been in law enforcement now 30 years. I come from a generation where a large majority, after you get out of the academy, fitness kind of drops off. They take the agencies even kind of take this mentality of, well, here's your 4 hours of defensive tactics training a year. And there are a lot of cops who kind of think that that's enough. Being that you're younger in law enforcement and working with a lot of these guys, do you find that more of them are taking more of an interest in themselves and wanting to get as much training as they can?
With DTAC or in general? Just
kind of in general. What are you seeing from the people that you're working with?
Honestly, so my current police department, which, obviously I'm not going to name them, and most of the officers know the training I offer. None of them go.
Do you think it's ego?
Yes. Yeah, I do. Is the gym where I'm giving free defensive tactics trainings across the street from the police department. There's no reason why they shouldn't be there.
So everybody coming to your class is from other agencies in the area?
Yes. I have the feds coming in and like maybe, so many different departments around San Diego. Probably 5 to 6 different police agencies are coming in. And I'm getting a lot of positive reviews. So there's no reason why. But even like, my last agency, I didn't offer this training back in St. Louis, but like I worked for a huge department. And I think out of like the 1,000 officers, there was only maybe me and like maybe 2 others that like trained. Like it just wasn't a thing. I mean, officers work out and they lift weights and some do CrossFit, but yeah, DTAC training is something that our profession is definitely lacking.
Well, and I think there are a lot who misjudge their ability in a fight.
Oh yeah.
I can honestly say now that you really don't know what fighting's like until you're in or with somebody who knows how to fight. And I think a lot of officers, they misjudge their ability based on the little bit of training that they're getting each year.
Yeah, I mean, 100% officers just rely on their duty belt and the little training they've gotten in the academy, and maybe some departments give like 1 or 2 training sessions a year, if they're lucky. I know my department back in St. Louis didn't do any extra DTAC training once you graduate the academy. So, yeah, officers rely on their tool belts, and that's where, that's one of the things our profession needs to be better about. One of my favorite quotes is ineffective force has the appearance of excessive force, and that's so true. Officers that have no training, and let's say the suspect starts fighting with them. Well, the officers, it just turns into a street fight because they don't know what to do. And let's say they get out their baton and just start wailing on them, and it's ineffective. And how does that look when you're getting videotaped? I mean, it's justified. A lot of times it is justified, but it's ineffective.
And you bring up a good point, is if you're not controlling the person quickly to where people around you have the ability to start recording it, at the end of the day, somebody who does not want to go to jail, it's not going to look pretty on video. There's just no way around it.
Yeah.
So if you're adding to that by being less prepared, it's just going to, and the thing that I really think that a lot of officers need to be mindful of is you need to be thinking about yourself, because you need to protect you, your family, your house, everything else. And like you brought up, if you're relying on ineffective tactics, it's never going to look good on video.
Nope. I mean, one of the common scenarios I see in law enforcement where suspects aren't fighting, but you know how they tense up with their hands under their stomach and they're on the ground and they just won't give you their hands just because they're just being difficult. I've seen officers get out their baton and start hitting them. I've seen officers just start, like, literally get in back mount, just start ground and pounding them. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, ineffective. And it doesn't, they don't get their arms out. If anything, that just makes the situation worse.
Right.
And then they get pissed and then they do try to fight us. So ineffective force has the appearance of excessive force. So how does that look now when there's this like really simple like jiu-jitsu techniques that you can use where it cranks their arm out from under their stomach, doesn't hurt them. It's quick, gets their arm behind their back and gets them in cuffs. But officers aren't being trained this stuff.
And more importantly, it doesn't look excessive on video.
Exactly.
So how do you feel, or how have you been able to balance, if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, I'm assuming you're probably somebody when you're on the road, because you've been in fights, it's not a matter of having to prove anything on the street. You know, I don't see you as somebody who's going to be like, hey, I'm going to prove to you that I'm a pro fighter. Is that true? Has that kind of made you think more than maybe react more?
Oh, yeah. I definitely try as hard as I can to verbally de-escalate. Like, especially, I've been a cop, almost 11 years now. Like, I do not want to get in use of, trust me, like, I do not want to get in use of forces. Like, 100%. I do not. I mean, cops are like fresh out of the academy. You're like, yeah, like, like, no, that's not me. I have nothing to prove. Especially, nowadays with everything going on, like that's the last thing I'd want.
But I would imagine you can also add to that by saying, I have no idea what that person's skill set is. And if I get in over my head, so to speak, now I'm putting somebody else in danger because they've got to come rescue me.
Oh, exactly. I mean, and I'm realistic. I'm 5'2", and, I walk around 130 pounds when I'm not cutting weight for a fight. I'm small. Like, I'm not about to, like, I don't want to go hands-on with some big dude that's trying to fight me. I mean, yeah, I have training, but that doesn't mean I'm always going to win. Like, especially with the size difference and the strength disadvantage I have, like, I'm realistic. Like, if I can avoid those situations and verbally de-escalate or be smart, and I'm going to verbally de-escalate and wait for my cover officer. And once my cover officer gets there, okay, if we need to go hands-on, now I have backup. Like, never would I put myself in a dangerous situation by myself, especially.
And it's like you said earlier, when you run your training classes, you specifically tell the women sometimes, don't do this move because it's not going to work for you.
Exactly.
And so the same thing on the street, trying to force a bad situation is just going to make a situation even worse.
Exactly.
So how do you feel I say we because I'm part of the law enforcement community, how do we get more officers into more training, doing DTAC, that type stuff?
Man, I just think it's a vicious cycle. Departments aren't giving officers the training they need, most departments. I think the Adopt A Cop was like a huge step, honestly. They have sponsored, I don't know how many, I want to say, it's definitely in the hundreds of officers and has gotten them into jiu-jitsu. I think just officers like me and a lot of officers around the country that are offering free defensive tactics helps. Even it's crazy, even with like, you hear the word free and you would think like everyone would be jumping on that bandwagon. It doesn't, the only thing it's costing you is time, but it's nothing out of your wallet. And even then, like, I don't know. I do think, the 11 years I've been a cop, I've definitely seen a huge shift in like officers training martial arts or jiu-jitsu. I think every year it's getting better and better. But yeah, unfortunately, I'm not seeing actual police departments pick it up, but I'm seeing individual jiu-jitsu academies or individual people like me and like a couple others that are like, hey, I'm offering this. Please join me.
Would you, from your experience, say jiu-jitsu would at least be the starting point where somebody should start their defensive tactics?
Yeah, I mean, I think anything's better than nothing. So jiu-jitsu, jiu-jitsu or wrestling, I think is the best. But even like if an officer doesn't want to train jiu-jitsu and you only want to box, okay, it's better than nothing. At least you're doing something. I don't know. Some officers preach Krav Maga. I don't have anything against Krav. I think with anything, like with jiu-jitsu, some techniques are great for law enforcement, and other techniques I'm like, I mean, it's great for the sport of jiu-jitsu. I wouldn't do that on duty. Same thing with Krav. I think there's things that are great for law enforcement, and other things I'm like, I don't know about that. So I mean, you just got to be smart and pick and choose. Like, if you decide to train, what would be good as a police officer and what, not as much.
What do you think as far as from a training aspect, gi or no gi, as it relates to law enforcement?
Man, that's like a huge debate on social media. I don't know. I prefer no gi, and I think that comes from my MMA background. And I think I trained gi for years back in St. Louis, so I have a lot of gi training under my belt as well. I mean, obviously I'm going to say both is the best. Do both. But if you have to pick one, I mean, I don't know. I see some like black belts are like, no, gi is better for law enforcement because you learn, like, what if they're wearing a hoodie and you can do like a collar choke? But then gi does like a lot of weird stuff, like spider guard and stuff that it's like, that's not realistic to being a cop. So I don't know. But then like I train under 10th Planet right now, and like 10th Planet does like rubber guard stuff. Well, clearly like you're not going to like rubber guard a suspect if they're like in your, if they're on top of you. So, I mean, I don't know. Look, just train jiu-jitsu. Like, to me, it's like, it doesn't matter if it's gi or no gi, just train.
How do you think you get more people into your classes? Do you think it's just time and letting them let the word get out there more? Or, I mean, because you bring up a great point. You're offering the training for free, and you're still, you're not, I mean, you're getting 18 people in the class, but it's not like you're getting 150 people in the class. What do you think it'll take to kind of get that ball rolling?
Man, I don't know. I mean, just having the word spread and, keep offering great training sessions, maybe offer more days. I know like a lot of officers have hit me up and they're like, I want to come, but I work that day. Because I have it every Friday at 5. So like, shift change and stuff. So maybe offering it, a morning session too. I mean,
are you working a plan now to maybe make this a bigger business venture?
Maybe. I've actually looked into possibly just opening up my own gym. I've toyed around with the idea. I have no like experience with like
being a business owner.
Being a business owner, and I've looked into it. So I don't know. I mean, that would be down the line, and that's something that like, I mean, if that blew up, I would love to be able to just run a gym full time and honestly just get out of law enforcement. That'd be a dream for me. I have a pretty cool business idea. I don't know if I want to share it. Just 'cause,
keep it secret.
Yeah, keep it secret.
No, I get it.
It'd be a gym for military and first responders, and it'd be something that I've never seen before, but it'd be a pretty cool idea if I can get it going. It would just be expensive.
Yeah, that's at the end of the day, that's what it's all about is getting the money to get it going. But, I definitely wish you the best with that. Now, the advertising you do for your training, it's strictly through your Instagram page, or have you created a separate website for it?
No, I have my social media. I have most of my advertisements through Instagram. I have a Twitter and Facebook, but I honestly rarely go on it.
What is your Instagram?
At Smashley MMA.
And on that, we'll announce when you're going to do your training classes.
Yeah, every week I post about my Friday night sessions just to remind people. I always get, like, every week I get cops messaging me, and a lot of times they're like, oh, I'll be there, and then they don't show. And I'm like, yeah, I get that a lot too. So
what's been your experience being in law enforcement with obviously your skill set and your background? Do you find that most other officers are accepting of it, or are they intimidated by it?
I get both. So, I was a fighter before I even became a cop. So I came into this profession already with that. I'm the type of person, I do not talk about my fight career at work. I don't know. I try to separate the two. if an officer asks me a question, sure, I'll answer your question, but I'm not the type that like shows off or like, I don't, I'm not like a cocky person at all. And
not trying to brag, not trying to bring attention to yourself.
Exactly. I try not to, I just want to blend in. Like I try not to bring attention to myself. Throughout my career, I've seen officers that think it's just so cool when they find out like I fight and I'm pro. Officers that like right away are like, oh my God, like that's really cool. And they ask me a ton of questions. I can tell like they really respect like what I do. And then I have come across officers that I think, I don't know if it's a jealousy issue or intimidation or like egos because they're like, oh, well, this female cop isn't going to show me up. Like, I don't know what the issue is. So I kind of get both, honestly. And, yeah, I mean, I've dealt with that my whole career. So, I mean, it's nothing, I know who I am and I know that I'm not a cocky person. I'm a humble person and I don't, I treat everyone with respect and kindness. And if someone doesn't want to talk to me just because I'm a pro fighter, I mean, that is what it is. I can't control that.
Have you ever been recognized while you're working by a civilian? And has it had a negative or a positive?
I've been recognized a couple times, mainly in St. Louis when I was a cop back there. I've been on like calls and people were like, oh, you're that fighter. You're that pro fighter. And I'm like, yeah. And that was, I think, mainly because years ago, I had one, I don't want to say it was a UFC fight. It was for that show, The Ultimate Fighter. So it was like, all over the TV. So I think I got recognized a lot after that. And then since I've been a cop in San Diego, I don't get recognized per se, but I've been on calls and people are like, do you fight? Or do you, like, you train? And I'm like, how do you know? And they're like, oh, your ears. Like the
cauliflower ears.
Like, yeah.
So you actually tried out for the UFC Ultimate Fighter Challenge? Or
yeah.
What's that process like?
I had to, this is when I lived in Missouri. So I flew to Vegas, tried out. I made the first cut of tryouts. So then I had to stay in Vegas for a week to do like more interviews and like physical and stuff. And I was selected. And they're like, all right, you're selected to be on the show. They loved that I was a cop. They thought that was so cool. So, and so I had to go up a weight class. So I had to fight at 115.
Now, if you would have been selected through the whole process, how long time-wise would it have been?
I think it was 7 weeks.
Would your agency have supported you on that?
So they weren't happy. They were not happy, especially. So if anyone watches The Ultimate Fighter, like there's drama too. So like all these fighters live in this like mansion together and they like get drunk and do like stupid stuff. So when I told my department, like, hey, I got selected for this show. I'm going to need 7 weeks off. Is that okay? I guess like I don't know, not the chief, but I guess like the lieutenant colonel, like someone way up that I don't even know who this person is. They're like,
I've never even met you.
Yeah, I've never even met him. I guess they like YouTube the show and they saw a clip of like people running around naked and being drunk in like a hot tub. And he was like, what? Like, absolutely not. Like,
are you sure they didn't see an episode of like Jersey Shore and thought it was US?
No, that show's crazy.
No, I know.
Like I used to watch it when I was a kid and like those fighters do like a lot of dumb things they shouldn't be doing. Like,
so I cut you off, but you talked about when you first went out there, they made you go up a weight class?
Well, because the UFC doesn't have 105.
Oh, okay.
So when I tried out as a 115 pounder. So I went up in weight to be on that show, and I was selected. But the show, a lot of the seasons they select, like let's say they select 16 females. Well, the first episode you have to fight each other, like they pair you up. So it's 8 female fights, and if you win, you stay on the show for another 7 weeks. If you lose, they fly you back home, and I lost.
Of the other 15 women, had you fought any of them previously?
No.
So everybody was, for the most part, new to each other.
I think some of them had fought each other in the past, but I hadn't fought any of them.
And so it was a one and done type deal. If you lost your fight, then that was it.
Yeah.
So then you ultimately ended up being out there for a week.
No, so I was out there for a week, got selected.
And then had to go.
I went back home. When I got back home, they're like, all right, you're selected. We're flying you back out, I think, like in 5 weeks.
So basically time to prepare.
Yeah. So I got 5 weeks to prepare.
But
5 or 6, yeah.
But you were still you were preparing and training for a weight class heavier than what you would normally have fought at.
Yeah.
So here's a weird one. What's it like to train to gain weight? I mean, do you just eat whatever you want, or you?
I mean, I still would have to, because I walk around at like 130, so like
So you were still going to cut?
Yeah, still going to cut, but it's just not as drastic of a weight cut.
Now, if something like that would have happened, though, I would imagine that would have probably made you have to rethink staying in law enforcement.
Yeah.
Because that's definitely going to put you on a trajectory that when you get to that level, I would imagine you can't balance a 40-hour-a-week job and that.
Yeah, I think I told my parents at the time, like, if I get on this show, because just because you get on the show for 7 weeks, that doesn't mean that the UFC is going to sign you. But I think I told my parents if the UFC signs me, I have to consider putting my law enforcement career on pause. Because my dream has been to be a UFC fighter. That's always been my dream. So I was considering it.
Going back to your parents and them not wanting you to fight when you were younger, do they support it now?
Oh, yeah. Now they love it.
Is it hard for them to go watch? Or have they said if it's hard for them to go watch?
Honestly, like, I tell them, like, just watch it from home. Like, don't come. Because they just, like, I'm already nervous, but they're, like, 10 times more nervous than me. So they stress me out. So I'm like, just stay at home and watch it on TV.
What's the largest crowd you fought in front of? Ballparkish, if you don't know the exact number.
Well, for MMA, I don't know. I had one Bellator fight. That was probably, I don't know, maybe 10,000. I don't know.
Oh.
But my one pro boxing fight for the charity, that was a couple years ago. They sell out like 30,000 people.
And you've got another one of those coming up.
Yeah.
When's that fight?
It's the day before Thanksgiving.
And for you, the training for that, do you go into a training camp?
Yeah.
And when will that start for you, or are you already into it?
I started, yeah.
And so what's training like for, what's a weekly schedule like for you now that you're in training camp? How many hours a day are you putting in?
So for this, I'm not putting in as many hours as I would if it was like an Invicta MMA fight. It's a pro fight, but at the end of the day, it also is a charity event. So, I mean, obviously I'm training hard. I want to win, but it's not to the same level. But I probably do like an hour of cardio, and then on my days off, like I'll do an hour of cardio in the morning, and then I'll do like an hour-long boxing session. Then I'll do like a private with my boxing coach. So it's honestly, to me, it might sound a lot, but that's not anything compared to what I would do for like an MMA fight.
What would an MMA fight be like?
Oh man, a day I'm off work or a day I'm working.
How would you balance a work day?
So last year I was on swing shift and I had 2 fights. So I'd get up at like 6 a.m., do a bunch of cardio for like an hour, and then I'd go to my MMA gym and be there for like 4 or 5 hours and then go straight to work. So maybe like, yeah, if I started at like 6, then I'd start my shift at 2. Like, I mean, I was the whole time I'm training until I start work.
That's got to impact your recovery time.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the biggest component of it is not getting the training in; it's getting the time off to recover.
And it sucked because, like, you know, pro fighters, like, they'll space out their training to rest their body, and I couldn't because of work, so I had to cram everything together with like no breaks. In
the sense of, because you can't take tomorrow off, and you know, because you don't have the available time to just rest.
Honestly, me resting my body was coming to work, like that, which is sad. But that was really like my time to rest my body was work.
Are you really big into like the whole meal planning thing? And
yeah.
And is it scheduled? Like, I have to eat at this time, or so? I mean, all of that has to just factor in.
I mean, it's doable. You can do it. I mean, there was times, like, obviously, like, you can't control what happens at work. So, like, if I'm supposed to eat this meal at this time and a major call comes out and I'm stuck on it, I mean, it is what it is. Like, I'm going to miss that meal or have it late. But
now, you've mentioned your fiancé. Does your fiancé support you both in your law enforcement and fighting career? Or
so she supports whatever I do. Obviously, she would prefer I'm not a cop just because of the dangers that it brings. And I've already had like a couple situations throughout my career that were obviously like, life and death, like close. So yeah, I mean, she would love for me to get out of the law enforcement, but not because, I mean, she loves cops and like supports it.
She just wants you to be safe.
Yeah, she just worries about me. As far as like MMA, she's my biggest fan. She also agrees like you're getting kind of old. I don't know how much longer, especially like 'cause we've been together for like 5 years now, and I think she sees like, and this is gonna sound messed up, but like my memory isn't the best anymore, and she contributes a lot of it to like my fight career. So she worries. She's like,
At this point, have you actually been diagnosed with a CT or
no,
traumatic brain injury?
no.
Is that a concern of yours long term?
I don't know. I guess I try not to think about it, like to avoid it. I mean, I am forgetful, and I don't know if it's just because
Was that before you were even a fighter?
I mean, I think it has gotten worse, honestly. I mean, I have had a lot of fights, and honestly, a lot of I feel like my damage to my body has been at training, not necessarily my real fights. You just got to find, when I moved to St. I love my gym. I love my gym. My gym's hardcore. Like, it's very old school. So when we spar, like, we're going really hard and some of the females that are my teammates, like, try and knock me out, like, even though we're teammates. So I love my gym. I would never change anything, but, some fighters are.
And it's an MMA specific gym?
It's MMA and Jiu Jitsu. It's everything. It has everything. And then some fighters are super against that, and they like are into that like touch sparring. So I mean, I chose that, and I don't mind that type of training. But if that's something that worries you, you can find the gym that's more like not as hardcore.
If somebody is thinking about actually trying to go the pro route, your advice: do it or not do it while you're still trying to balance a law enforcement career. Obviously, you want to do it for you, but for the advice to somebody else, what would your advice be?
I mean, if this is your passion, if you're passionate about law enforcement and you really want to be a fighter, try it. See, I mean, you don't have to go straight pro, and I didn't. I had like 16 amateur fights before I went pro. So,
is there a minimum number of amateur fights you're required to have before going pro?
No. I mean, some people just go straight pro and don't even have amateur fights. I mean, that's an option too. That's not a smart option. But yeah, I mean, I don't see many officers wanting, like, a lot of officers want to train jiu-jitsu and compete in jiu-jitsu, but it'd be really rare to find an officer that's crazy like me that did both. But yeah, I mean, it's doable, and I'm proof that you can do both. There's a UFC fighter. I can't remember his name. His last name's like Gale or Gal. He's a cop in Houston, and like he's in the UFC, and he's a full-time cop. I mean, so it's you see other first responders doing it, and it's possible. It's just hard. So I would recommend, start with jiu-jitsu, maybe even have just a Muay Thai or boxing fight first, because that's a Muay Thai camp or a boxing camp is not going to be as stressful as like an MMA camp. If that makes sense.
No, I get it. And your advice to officers as far as their physical fitness and defensive tactics, or just training in general, how do we get more of them focused on taking care of themselves physically? What do you think?
I don't know. I just think if people choose this career, you have to put in your mind that your department's not giving you the training that you need to stay safe and go home to your loved ones, because it's true. I don't know a single department that does. And there's nothing against the department. I mean, the departments have a lot on their plate. They have all these different things that they got to do. If you love your family and your loved ones, and you want to make sure you go home safe to them, or just in general, like, don't get in a lawsuit, or just, in a sticky situation at work, like, you need to make a promise to yourself, like, I'm going to train above the standard. That's what I always say on my Instagram, like, train above the standard. I go to the Glock store several times a month and pay for private sessions to get my shooting better. I'm paying my gym membership to go to jiu-jitsu, go to MMA. Like, it's a sacrifice, but, I told myself if I'm going to be in this profession, I want to be the best I can be for my family and for my coworkers and for the community. So I made that promise. I'm going to keep it, and that's what I'm doing.
For most people, when they would think of law enforcement, the highest level or the most tactical would be a SWAT team. Or do you do anything like that?
No, I tried out for SWAT once and I didn't pass tryouts, and I haven't tried since. I've been focused on actually trying to become a canine handler. That's kind of like my focus shift.
And think that's going to happen soon?
That's my goal. I'm currently at a really small department that doesn't have many opportunities, so hopefully in the future it will happen for me.
And I've seen you wear this shirt before. For those who, not watching this on YouTube, We Go Home. What's that about?
We Go Home, it's a company that sponsors me, but I love them to death and what they stand for, because it's the same where I say train above the standard. It's pretty much their mentality. It's we go home. So, they praise, they're constantly telling first responders, work out, train martial arts, go shoot, do what you need to do to go home.
And anybody wants to come to your training, if they're law enforcement, it's open to them. It's on Fridays.
Every Friday at 5 p.m.
And it's in the San Diego area, but, what's the furthest you've had somebody drive in for your training?
I had one guy from Arizona come 2 weeks ago. I think he was in town, and he already followed me on Instagram, and he wanted to come check it out. So.
And someone rolling in, bring all your gear, vest, belt.
I say it's optional. I wear my duty belt when I do it, just because I think it's better to train with it, because there's like jiu-jitsu moves that I can hit perfect in like my rash guard and my shorts. As soon as I put on that duty belt, I'm like, holy crap, like I can't do this move anymore. Or like my vest. So it's realistic to the job. Like, your flexibility is going to be limited. So I recommend it, but honestly, a majority of officers don't bring it, which I get, because that's a pain in the ass to have to like lug it back and forth.
Do you train in just like BDU pants, or what? What should I guess what I'm getting at is, what should they anticipate coming in? What should they prepare to bring with them, and what?
I just tell them when officers hit me up, I say, bring water. If you have a mouthpiece, bring it, and that's it. You can wear shorts, you can wear BDU pants, T-shirt.
And how long classes go? An hour, 2 hours?
They're an hour. Sometimes we go a little bit over time. Because lately I've been having them. I have them go live the last 10 minutes. I think that's important. For them to get realistic training of like, oh shit, like I don't want the first time they're in a oh shit scenario, the first time they get hit in the face on the street. So I make them go through that training. Obviously, like we do it safely so no one gets hurt. It's like 40%. But yeah, so
and when you're talking we go live, what's a scenario that they're potentially looking at?
Let's say one Friday I went over escaping the mount. Someone's on top of you and mount, how to get out. So we go over several techniques. We warm up for like 10-15 minutes, go over those techniques for 25 minutes, and then, the last period of the class, I give the suspects MMA gloves or boxing gloves, and the officers are on bottom, and it's like, all right, 1 minute, I have the timer. The suspect, I want you to try to stay in mount and punch the officer in the face and make it difficult for them. But 40% power, so no one gets hurt. Officers, you need to get out of all the techniques I just showed you the last 30 minutes, try them. See what works for you and what doesn't. Because some techniques might work great for me, but not for you, and vice versa, because of different body types. And I have them do 1 minute goes, and then we switch partners, because I want everyone to experience different body types. So everyone goes live with every single person in class. So you're going to go with every single body type, every strength type, everything.
Nothing like having a person 40 pounds heavier laying across your chest.
Yeah, you got to experience it. Like, it's not, like I tell the females, it's not doing them justice to only have them go live with females. That's not helping them.
Well, especially in law enforcement. I mean, if you think about it from a woman's perspective, the chances of you encountering a woman in a physical confrontation are astronomically low compared to the number of men you're going to encounter.
Oh yeah.
To almost to a degree, you'd almost only want to roll with men.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll let them, because like I could tell a lot of the females would rather drill the techniques with other females, which is fine. So I let them pair up with each other. But when it's time to go live, I tell them, like, yeah, you can go live a couple rounds with the females, but you have to go live a couple rounds with the men too. And the men have to go live with the females. So
for the women listening who might be interested in coming to your training class, based on the comments and questions that you've gotten from other females, what advice or what would you want to tell them now?
If they want to come to my class or just train in general?
No, you're coming to your class. Based on the women that have been in your class, maybe come in and had, questions or reservations,
Yeah, I mean, I've had a ton of females come to my class, and they all love it. I'm getting a lot of positive feedback. The same consistent females are coming back as long as they're off work. So, I mean, if they didn't like it, they wouldn't come back. Especially when I started incorporating the live scenarios, I got a lot of positive feedback, and I was really stressed. I was like, man, they're not going to come back. Like, they just got punched in the face. But they're like, no, like, this is needed. Like, they like thanked me. Like, thank you for giving. Like, this was an eye opener for us.
I would imagine, though, on the flip side, though, you've probably had people who get in the middle of it and just, no pun intended, they tap out and just walk out of the class.
No, never.
Oh, that's really good.
Never. No one's gotten injured, thank God, because that's like my biggest worry. No one's gotten injured, and my classes, like, and I preach, like, do not hurt each other. We're all on the same team. We all have to work. We have families. So I haven't encountered anyone that has come in with an ego that's like been like, no, like, I'm going to show off and like just beat up everyone. Like, that hasn't happened.
Speaking along the lines of getting hurt, though, I'm assuming there's got to be some sort of waiver or liability form that they've got to sign?
Yeah, we have a waiver. Mm-hmm.
Well, cool. In wrapping up, anything else you'd just, like to tell anybody who's kind of on that fence or maybe thinking about ramping up or taking on more advanced training?
No, I think jiu-jitsu is very much growing in our profession, and it's becoming popular amongst cops. And no matter what city you're in, there's so many jiu-jitsu gyms that are pro law enforcement, and they give discounts to law enforcement or first responders. Look into it. I highly suggest officers need to train jiu-jitsu, whether you're a first-year cop or a 20-year cop. Like, you got to train. So
cool. I appreciate your time. Good luck on your boxing match.
Thank you.
Hopefully, you don't get a orbital injury again. But thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking your time to listen to the podcast. I truly hope you enjoyed it. Not only is the podcast available on audio platforms, but you can also watch it on YouTube at the Transition Drill Podcast channel. Please subscribe for future episodes. The best way you can help the show is by getting the word out. If you think somebody else might enjoy it, I would appreciate it if you would share it with them. Also, if you have the time, please go to Apple Podcast and leave me a rating. I welcome your feedback, both positive and negative. You can also go to the website, transitiondrillpodcast.com, and through the Contact tab, send a message directly to my email with any comments or suggestions. Thank you again, and I hope you tune in for the next one.